So, T-Bob, there are 4 coaches in the Big Ten entering season number 2. What we're going to do in this game is we are going to rank them just based on who do you think's the best coach? Okay, a little broad. We can kind of be fluid with it. And to me, I'd like to hear your opinion. I think you got to look at Matt Rule and Luke Fickell when you're thinking about the top of this list right here. I think you got to start with Matt Rule, Luke Fickell. Would you agree? And if so, who would you put up there?
If the parameter is maybe best coach, most potential, then I think the most potential lies in Matt Rule, because even though their recent results have not spoken to this, I do believe the power of Nebraska. Like, I think they have a higher ceiling than does Wisconsin.
Yeah.
However, with both Fickell and Rule, you do have to be kind of objectively honest that, especially compared to maybe somebody like David Braun, like, year 1 was a disappointment. Like look at Matt Rule's year. If you zoom in, and I think Matt Rule's going to succeed over time. I think he'll make Nebraska nationally relevant. But if you zoom in, you can see, well, no, it was different. They were tougher. They played a bit smarter. They played a bit harder. But at the end of the day, they still found a way to lose a ton of close one-score games that they should not have lost. Luke Fickell takes over a 7-6 team and goes 7-6. He makes $7.5 million a year. We're not paying $1 million a win. That's Mark Stoops stuff. I look at David Braun, and I'm like, dude, nobody in the country exceeded more expectations more than Northwestern and Braun. I mean, they were awful the last couple of years. They lose what is supposed to be the best coach in their program's history, and then they go 5-4 conference and 8-5 overall. Yeah. So, like, I think we got to show some respect to Braun here.
So, where would you put him? Would you put Braun even above Fickell then, or?
I would go, okay, if are we doing
Fickell
their
has
record
to me, T-Bob, I agree. Matt Rule has the history of turning over Temple, of turning over Baylor. I believe he'll turn over Nebraska. Luke Fickell has a playoff experience, playoff berth. But to your point, David, but it's 1 year, and that's why I'm hesitant. Are you saying you'd put Braun above one of these 2 guys?
I cannot do that yet because of what you just referenced, the resume, right? But then if you look at Braun and Walters, those were both DCs without resumes, and it could not have gone more opposite in terms of the fall off for Purdue or the rise of Northwestern. So I guess if I was to rank this list, me personally, T-Bob ranking it, who's the best coach? I would go Rule, I go Fickell, I go Braun, and I go Walters, but I'd almost want to throw a little asterisk or addendum next to Braun saying, like, he's only here because of the small sample size. Yeah. Like, if he builds on what – and maybe he never gets to – like, again, I think Northwestern is capped in a way that Nebraska and Wisconsin are not, but it is inarguable that in year number 1, out of these 4, David Braun had the best year, and it's not even particularly close.
And Northwestern is capped, and that's why I almost think that benefits David Braun in the sense, like, the context matters. Look at Matt Rule and the alignment from their program, what they've been able to do with NIL and recruiting. You know, Luke Fickell, certainly has more resources than Northwestern, and yet look what Northwestern did when you talk about exceeding expectations. Probably no one in the country did more than David Braun. I like Matt Rule at 1. Even Fickell has the playoff berth, but I like Matt Rule at 1 because I look at how frustrating last year was, and yet I still think he's fighting an uphill battle. They lost so many games because they turned the ball over consistently. Well, that's what they've been doing for the past 5-6 years. Like, I need to see year 2, year 3, and historically, Matt Rule, it has been year 2, year 3, where the programs have taken rocket ships. When I look at these 2 teams, though, T-Bob, between David Braun and Luke Fickell, I almost am willing to say I think Northwestern right now, I almost like Northwestern to have a better year than Wisconsin. They're one of the most experienced teams in all of college football, not just the Big Ten. They return a bunch of pieces on both sides of the football. I still think there's a lot of question marks here for Wisconsin. And one more thing about Ryan Walters here. I get it. I'm cool with having him down here, but you have to – what he did at Illinois, turning that defense around to the number 1 scoring defense in college football. Now they're going to be pumping defensive players into the league. You take over a hard situation there in Purdue. I think he's got a chance to climb up this list a little bit too. But in terms of expectations, I don't know that I'm there yet with Purdue.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, the thing about Walters is, unfortunately for him, with Fickle and Rule, we have resume to fall back on. We only have this 1 year, which was a tough situation. Look, I like this guy, Redbird, in the stadium app. Very fair analysis by T-Bob. I knew I liked him. I like you too, Redbird. I feel like we really connected here.
Well, here's the interesting thing for all these coaches, T-Bob, before we step aside for a break. There's no more West. These are all teams in the West. Now it's open season, and you're adding Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. So the path to victories is going to get ever more challenging. Whoever can make it out of that gauntlet will have to pay them some respect.